in our arsenal of selection tools is the Quick Selection tool. And this is in a family of tools that select based on color. So the color of the object being different from the color of the background. We have the Object Selection tool, which pretty easily, if you just drag a rectangle up around what object you want selected, it tries to find that object. So that does a pretty good job. Command D. The Quick Selection tool allows you to paint a selection. So it works with the brush here. You can change the size. You can also hit the right or the left bracket keys in order to change the size of that brush. So you can kind of see that working here. Left bracket, right bracket. So that works with any brush. And then you start on the inside of the object and then paint. So just click and drag and it will find the edge of contrast. So it'll find the end of that color and select it. And then the last of these selection tools that work based on color is the magic wand. So say I want to very easily select the entire background. Since the background is all one color, it can do that very easily. Otherwise, the tolerance has to do with how many pixels on either side of that color it will accept. So you could turn down the tolerance to like 10 pixels and only select like 10, pixels that are, around that shade of green. Or you can change Command D to deselect. You can change it back to, or put it on 100 or something, and then it'll select even more pixels on either side of that color green. So obviously it selected a lot. So typically if you turn the tolerance down to 50, it's pretty good. Now this is really good for selecting a background that's all one color. So in this case, if I want to select all of the car parts, right now it might take a while to turn it on add to selection and just keep clicking until, it selects all of the different colors. So an easier way to do that might be to select the background, which in this case is one color. And now very easily I have everything that's blue selected, and then I can very easily go up to the select menu and go down to inverse. So watch what this does. It now switches, so it selects the opposite of whatever I had selected on the screen. So instead of the blue, now I have everything else, which are all of the car parts. So I could very easily select all of those, Command C, Command V. Now they're all on their own layer, and I can select and move them around without worrying about the background color. So that would be one helpful way of using the magic wand tool to make very helpful selections. I kind of like seeing the blue though. The checkerboard means that that's a transparent part of that layer. There's nothing on that layer. So if we turn on the blue, it just kind of gives some more contrast here. Now, another cool thing that you can do with the Quick Selection tool is use this select and mask up here. It allows you to refine that edge. Now all of these edges are pretty sharp and pretty clear, so if I were to click on this car, it would very easily select that, and that edge is a very clear edge. But you might have an image that looks a little bit more like this, in portraits especially. Hair tends to be a little bit more complicated, so a little harder to select. If I wanted to say maybe put her on a separate layer so that I could do something separate to her outline versus the background. Maybe I want to sharpen her and make the background more blurry or something like that. There's all kinds of reasons why I might want her on her own layer. So to use the Quick Selection tool, since she is a different color from the background, I can click and drag around, and make sure you don't go outside of your selection. You want to stay on the inside because it's going to that edge of contrast. So it's trying to find where that object ends, which is at her hair. So it did a pretty good job selecting her shoulders, but obviously her hair is kind of complicated. So this is where this refine edge or this select and mask can come in handy. So I've kind of broken my own rule. I didn't make a copy of the background, but that's okay because I'm just using this for an example. So if I go to select and mask, I can see it's very choppy, and Photoshop didn't do a very good job of finding that complicated edge. So I'm going to go over here, and I have several options. I'm going to turn on Smart Radius, and then increase the radius just a few pixels. And now it did a little better job of trying to find it. If I click and drag this, now my cursor becomes a brush. So when I click and drag, you can see that now Photoshop is trying to be a little smarter with finding that edge. So this works pretty good on hair or fuzz. And you can see wherever it's red, the mask, I turn the view on overlay so that I can very easily see what I have selected versus the background is displayed in red right now, so I can differentiate. Okay, so then once I go around the outline and I know that I have her selection pretty well, I can put her on her own layer and add some effects just to her. Now another option for this edge, so I'm going to click cancel and go back to my car. So say I want to select this tire, but I want it to be maybe a little bit of a softer edge. So instead of like a hard edge, whenever I drag it, you can see that edge is very, very, like very solid of a line. So what I might want to do instead is after I've made my selection with the quick selection tool or the object selection tool, whichever one it may be, I can go under select and mask, and then this time just increase the feather amount just a tad. So that softens the edge a little bit. Now I might have to shift the edge in so that I don't get any of the blue. There we go. So I can see a preview of what that's going to look like if I were to copy and paste it. So when I click OK, it goes back to just my preview. And now I can make the decision if I want to Command C, Command V, put that on its own layer. Layer 2, I'm going to rename that front tire, and then use my move tool and see what that edge looks like. Okay, so not totally appropriate for a tire. You probably want more of a hard edge on the tire, but you can see what your options are with that refine edge tool. So you have the object selection, quick selection, and magic wand that help you when you have a very obvious contrast between what you're trying to select and the background color. Now another cool feature, so if we go back to our Bigfoot here, zoom out a little bit so you can see what we have on this layer. And again, we always want to start by making a copy of the background. Number one rule, no matter what you're doing, you always want to do that. And now, another cool feature of this quick selection tool is select subject option. As far as I know, this is new. I haven't really used it extensively. I just discovered it recently, and I'm pretty excited about it because when you click on select subject, Photoshop uses its AI. The artificial intelligence in this program gets better every year, and it tries to guess what you want selected based on what looks like, you know, the foreground and what looks like the background. So it tries to find your object, and it did a pretty good job. You can always, you know, add to selection and then use the quick selection tool and just continue dragging and adding until you have the entire shape that you want. So that is using the powerful AI software in Photoshop of the quick selection tool and all of the associated tools that allow you to tell Photoshop what you want. Command C, Command V, and if we hide the background, we can see what we have, and there's our object. Pretty easily put on a new layer.